Welcome back to the ICU, the space where inner consciousness is unraveled and the intentionally competent you is born. Here, we don't rant, we reframe. We don't perform therapy from a distance. We offer real analysis of emotional architecture, policy trauma, and the spiritual nervous system of a society in crises. And we do this not for clicks, not for catharsis, but for clarity. I'm your host, still seated across the couch from Uncle Donald and from the trembling, tangled psyche of this nation and the global system that keeps feeding it. A reluctant but radically hopeful disaster and crisis therapist for the national and planetary soul. Today, we unpack a recurring pattern with real, repeated consequences. The Inauguration Syndrome, when fragile ego meets absolute power. What happens when fragile ego structures take oaths of office they are not emotionally, morally, or spiritually equipped to uphold? This episode just continues to extend the no rant philosophy that I posit, where we reframe different approaches and continue to ground our inner authority framework while examining deeper trauma within and around power. Let's begin. As we heard from our inaugural episode, not once, but twice, Uncle Donald took the oath of office. And for all those who are keen observers, these oaths serves as performances, not promises. So I want us to begin this episode with what's real. Donald J. Trump has now taken the presidential oath of office twice, first in 2017 and again in 2025. Despite insurrection, indictments, moral collapse, he has returned. Now, the sitting president of the United States once more, claiming a victory grounded in an overwhelming mandate, as his minions put forth, of both electoral college and popular vote. But let's be clear. This wasn't redemption. It's simply reenactment. We've seen this before. This was not a peaceful transition of power, because he still didn't acknowledge he lost the first time. This is the institutionalization of a wounded psyche. This is the Inauguration Syndrome, the ascension of ego into ceremony, of grievance into governance. It's not just about how he governs. It's about how many of us were willing to excuse, even exalt, ego over empathy in exchange for our false safety. What does this tell us? How do we manage fragile ego with real power? That is the perfect storm, in my opinion. In therapy, we know this truth. When unresolved ego wounds meet unchecked authority, the result is control, not care. And we all see this. We all witness this every day. Signs an executive order, just dismantling lives. And what does he do? Goes and plays golf. just to tell you I can do whatever I want when I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Control, not care. Uncle Donald never sought the presidency to serve. He sought the presidency to be seen. And when a wounded ego is handed global power of this magnitude, validation becomes legislation. Emotional hunger becomes national performance policy. But what makes this a syndrome is not just his fragility. It's our collective consent to the illusion. Not because he led with truth, but because he mirrored our fear, our projection, our nostalgia for dominance over depth. And what we witnessed at rallies, during pandemics, in courtrooms across this great country, and war rooms, was not leadership. It was the dramatization of a fragile self, underwritten for millions. This is what scares me. Power without soul. I ask myself, what has happened to the ritual? The inauguration period is meant to be a sacred civic covenant. A ritual in which ego bows to responsibility and stewardship replaces self-promotion. But what we saw in both of Uncle Donald's ascents to power isn't reverence. It's revenge. It was a ritualized grievance theater. A nation handing the nuclear codes to someone still begging for a father's approval. And this is witnessed in every speech. A monologue of insecurity. Every press conference, an emotional leak. Every policy, a power performance. I mean, we're not just witnessing the bending of democratic norms. We are watching their breakdown under the weight of unhealed ego. Institutions didn't just get tested, they were traumatized. Lies about cutting government spending through cutting contributive works, federal jobs, while blind to personal aggrandizement spending of taxpayer dollars. Bigoted immigration policies, self-enrichment at the expense of our poorest citizens. Our neighbors, our nervous systems are traumatized. And truth didn't just get fractured. Truth is branded, auctioned, and even buried so deep that it's hard for some people to even discover what it is. But in the ICU, where we leverage your inner authority for a higher living, we ask questions. We take critical analyses of things. And the question that I posit to you is this: have we learned anything yet? Let's take an inward deep dive. The syndrome is not just national, it's personal. What part of you still waits for a strong man to save you? Where in your psyche have you traded truth for tribal comfort? When did you last call control leadership. And if you were to inaugurate yourself into leadership of your own inner world, what would your oath sound like? Because this isn't just about Trump. It's about our nervous systems, still spiraling, still seduced, still craving domination. But what dignity feels too quiet? And in instances like this, where dignity feels too quiet, we have an E, we have an in, we have a path forward. We have an ICU practice that we term the inauguration ritual. The inner inauguration ritual. That inner worth. And here are some steps. So this week, I want you to do this. Initiate yourself into soul leadership. Draft your inner inauguration oath. Declare what you will no longer abandon to maintain approval. And it'll go something like this. I solemnly swear to value clarity over charisma, to reject spectacle as a strategy, to make truth my compass, not popularity my drug. Name the ego you once voted for. Who inside you needs to feel big to feel safe? Who raises their voice when they feel unseen? Bless them. Then reclaim your seat. Reclaiming that seat starts with public accountability, private truth. So this week, I ask you, trace when your words contradict your wisdom and ask, am I speaking from clarity or from crowd control? So what I say to you is this. We don't need a third term. We don't need a third oath. We need a reckoning with the first two. We don't need another savior. We need a population with healed egos, sacred boundaries, and sharpened discernment. Because the inauguration syndrome is not about who holds the mic. It's about how many of us have silenced our own. So I call on you, reclaim your oath, reaffirm your authority, rebuild your truth. Thank you for joining me during this episode. Next week on ICU, we'll go into the lie called strength, decoding the myth of the strong man. Until then, remember to always carry what serves you, release what doesn't, and keep walking forward with your ancestors at your back and your inner compass ahead as your guide. May you diagnose wisely, resist kindly, and re-image boldly. And please don't forget, subscribe, engage, share, and always breathe. And as we say every year, at every interaction, every engagement, we get better and better every day. Continue to send love to your nervous system. I see you.